Good evening and welcome to my channel live stream. I'm Princess Lillian and this is Princess Lillian's Garden. Thank you and welcome. I can see you. This evening we're going to be talking about propagation of spider plants. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Steven. Much appreciated. I'll just wait 2 minutes more. We can have a look. You see that we have a display of spider plants available. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Careful Farm. Thanks very much. I can see you. You're welcome. Hello. Okay. Thank you very much for being here. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. I can see you've given me the like already. Thank you so much. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be discussing how I propagate spider plants and how we can actually end up having a lot of spider plants so that we'll have enough for our home space and also to give away or to sell because spider plants produce, they are very prolific. But one thing we must notice and take is that when they are growing, they may just get dry if we are not cautious, and this can result in the roots not being able to take very easily. So it's points like this that I'm going to be mentioning as I go into this evening's video. And I'm also going to mention how we can get spider plants by seed. So we can have spider plants grown from seeds. If you want to take your spider plant in such a situation that you are not growing the little baby directly, you want a seed of this plant. I will get to that in a bit as well. So spider plants are a bunch of plants that like to grow indoors and they also survive outside. You find out that when you see these spider plants, they form a kind of a beautiful picture. It looks like spiders because you can see there's a whole lot of them. That is why it's called spider plants. And they are all just coming out of stalks growing on this plant. Here I have two different types of spider plants. I have this one that is got a white stripe in the middle. It's actually the more popular type that I know of. The spider plant that has a white stripe in the middle, and also there's a spider plant that has a green in the middle. So I hope you're seeing this. This bit in the middle is green, but for this one, the middle is white. So that is what makes the two spider plants different from each other. And if you have them, it's actually quite nice because it makes a certain kind of selection the way they look. You find out that these spider plants, will continue growing throughout the summer. They will grow and get very big. After that, you would find that as winter is coming along, the growth will slow down. Now, with the slowdown in growth, you will see that some of the leaves may start to turn yellow. This is quite natural. This is because spider plants likes to lose some of its leaves over the winter. Sometimes at a certain age, if it's about 3 or 4 years old, it will definitely lose all of its leaves. Or if you keep it outdoors and it's winter and very cold, it will lose all of its leaves. And by losing all of its leaves, I mean the leaves will turn yellow. In this case, you would have to trim off all the leaves and the plant will grow back in spring. But if it's indoors, the leaves will remain, but a few of them will turn yellow and you can just leave it like that. So, what I do a lot of the times is I have some spider plants that are quite large and those would have to stay outside. So, the leaves will turn to yellow when winter is coming. They are already turning now. So, by the time we are in the middle of winter, all the leaves will be yellow. I'm going to be dealing with that in spring by cutting off all the dry leaves, and then we would have a resurfacing of green leaves in about a week or two, because that is how prolific spider plants are. But one thing I would have to do is consider if I have to take the spider plant out of the pot. So I would look and see how long ago I placed it in the pot to decide whether it needs to be divided. So spider plant is such a plant that you can keep dividing and you will be having more and more of the spider plants. You can use them giveaways, you can use them for plant swaps. You will just continue to have a lot more spider plants than you had originally. So this way is very good because if you want another plant, you can just look after your spider plant and use it for a swap. You can also give it out as gifts for friends. Like, oh, somebody wants a gift. It's not every time that you need to buy something that would probably clutter up. If someone who is a plant lover, you can give them some spider plants because these plants are quite easy to reproduce and it doesn't take too much caring and you can just place it indoors or outdoors. This spider plant has been indoors throughout the year and it's been producing babies. It's the type that has a green band in the middle, whereas this spider plant has been both indoors and outdoors. It was indoors during the winter, and then when summer came, I put it outdoors. And this is how it's been. It's looking very well grown, also producing a lot of spider babies. When I want to make this spider into little plants, what I will just do is place a pot very close and stick these little babies into the pot and they will carry on growing their roots. There are some roots right now, they're looking very soft and delicate. So at somewhere about this time, if I want to grow this into separate plants, this is the time that I should put them in pots. But I don't want to grow them into separate plants. I want them to remain on this mother plant as the little spiders surrounding it. So that's why they're all still hanging there. But if anyone is like too big, you can now take it off because then it will probably break off by itself. For example, one like this, although it's still on here and it's all right, and okay. But if it falls off, I'll be prepared to put it in a bottle of water. I've got one here that is falling off in the past. It was big and then it just fell off because of the sheer weight. So this weight made the spider plant to break off, and I put it in a bottle of water. So spider plants can grow both in soil and in water. That is one point that is also good about spider plants. The water roots are quite delicate, but it still grows nicely because this thing has been in here for over 2 months now, and it's still obviously alive, looking very fresh and green, and it's developed a lot more roots. So this means this spider plant is actually okay being in the water, and it's another way of propagating and having more spider plants. So as this is growing, when I want to put it in the soil, I will know that it's already got roots and I can carefully put this in the soil. But if you want to place it in the soil, as the root is now very thin and very delicate, I'll have to make sure that the soil is very wet. Don't place it in soil that is dry because it's already used to being in water and it has grown roots. It has grown water roots. So it means it's not doing a lot of work, it's just being fed directly by the water. If I want to put it in the soil, I'll have to make sure that soil is very well watered. That's one way to keep the spider plant growing happily when I'm ready to put it in soil. And this can create a spider plant for somebody else to have a swap with another plant or a gift. This is one thing that is very nice about the spider plant. And this spider plant at some point will start to bring out little babies, just like this one. Now, there are times that I don't want these little babies on my spider plant. And if that is the case, like you have some spider plants, they're bringing out babies, but there are some in certain parts that you don't want them to have so much little babies. You just want the leaves to be there. Then, as soon as they are growing out, you clip it right below before it even starts to grow this at the tip. So it might be something like this. When you take a look at this, you can see that it's so big, and you would wonder, oh, does it not have any little spiders on it? But what happens is I just come along and clip. This is one that I have not clipped yet, although I've clipped it once while it was shorter, but it still carried on growing. But what I'm saying is that you can just take the little ones that are growing out and clip it before it develops the spider on its head. This is how it is originally. This is still complete. So I'm going to have to clip this to keep this plant from producing the babies, and it just keeps it neat. So there are times you go somewhere and you see a spider plant and it's got a lot of spider babies on it. But then there are times you will see a spider plant and it doesn't have a lot. This is the reason. I think some of them have been clipped because I would clip my own, and I know a lot of other friends, they don't want the spiderlets on some of their spider plants because of where they located it. So you just clip this off, you leave it on, and they do so. What thing I noticed that is the difference between the two is that the leaves now grow bigger. You can see the leaves on this. It's got the green in the middle, and so we'll compare it with the leaves on this one. In fact, this plant came from this top one, and its own leaves are bigger than this because that top plant has been allowed to be having spiderlets, but this one has not been allowed. So, to make your spider plant to have bigger leaves, you take off all this that is trying to grow spiderlets, and the leaves will be getting bigger. That's one way to widen the leaves on the spider plant. Makes it grow greener, makes it grow bigger. Those are the two things that I noticed that are differences that we find in how we treat the spider plants. Also, the spider plants does not need too much watering. You can water it maybe twice a week, but don't let it get dry, because if spider plant gets dry, the tips start to burn off. That is, the tips start to show the dryness by turning brown. And if you now come along and you water your spider plant, it doesn't make any difference anymore. Once the tip has become brown, it's going to remain brown. So you want to actually look after your spider plant and make sure you don't let the tips turn brown. But if it does turn brown, it's not a big deal. But if you just want to keep it in this pristine condition and you don't want it to turn brown, you try and make sure that you water it regularly. Don't wait and let the water get dry and the plant is getting burnt, and then you come back and then you put a lot of water. That's not how to treat a spider plant. A spider plant wants regular watering, like most other plants. You need to treat this one with regular watering and it will grow well. But even if you now don't give it the regular watering, as it can happen in some cases, the only thing that would happen is that if you just have a bit of brown tips like this has, because I can even say that I wouldn't remember all the time, but I just remember to water this one. This one has a few brown tips that's about to actually break off because it's already very dry. That is what causes the spider plant leaves to go brown because of irregular watering and the plant going dry. So if we want to develop spider plants that will be quite big with the leaves, then we need to take off the spiralets as soon as they start developing, and remember to water them regularly. That is the best way to look after the spider plant. Some spider plants can be placed very close to the sun, to the windows where they will receive a lot of sunlight. They will be lighter. And if you place your spider plant away from sunlight, it will try to make up and produce a lot of chlorophyll. That means if it's in the shade, if your spider plant is in the shade, it will produce a lot of chlorophyll and it will be very green. So it depends on the type of spider plant you want to produce. That's how you will treat your spider plant. You can either place it very close to sunlight and you know that it will come out looking a bit light. But if you place it in the shade, it will grow and the leaves will be very green. I'm going to go and get the example of the one that I've placed in the shade. So it doesn't receive a lot of light. The leaves have not grown very big, but you can see that they are still healthy and they are still very, very beautiful. In fact, I like the very green one with very little leaves. That's why I've decided to create one that is that type as well. So we find all these ones that have a lot of spiderets on them because they are receiving a lot of sunlight. So they are producing a lot of babies. If it's a bit in the shade, it shouldn't do something like that. It will it will start um it will start being very green because it needs all the chlorophyll to survive. Now, one other point that we'll also consider is that when you put a spider plant in a pot, the pot should have drainage. Now, these two spider plants were grown from spiderlets from each of the spider plants. You can see that this one has the whitish band in the middle, and this one has the greenish band in the middle. Now, what I want to show you is that I just created both of them out of a little bit like this. I didn't have to put it in water. I just tucked it into the soil and it started growing. So if you see a spider plant that is broken off like this, it's not completely done away. You don't have to do away with it. You put it in the soil and it can start to grow again. That is the beauty of spider plants. So far, it's not completely crushed. You can still regrow it and you would get a very good set of plants out of them. So sometimes when I find all these spider plants and the spiderets are too many, I can just harvest some of them and put them in pots and, dispose of them depending on how I may give them out as gifts, or somebody wants to make a swap, or sometimes somebody may come along and want to buy them. So you can create all this for yourself in this way. But what you have to take note of is that the spider plant grows very fast and very beautifully, but you don't want it to be getting damaged so that it doesn't have a lot of tarnish on it. You have to be very careful and place it so that it's not getting crushed, because if the spider plant leaf is getting crushed, I notice that happens a lot. You will find that when the spider plant grows bigger, that this will appear and it will remain. So the spider plant has to be located where it's not going to be getting crushed or squeezed by maybe people passing by. I'll show you an example. Now, this spider plant was placed just by the door, and this is what I'm talking about. Now, these leaves have been crushed, and there's no way that I can lift it up and it will stay up again. So, it doesn't actually create a picture of beauty to have this spider plant. It's just like well, we can do away with. But if you are looking at this spider plant, this is the side of the spider plant that was actually facing the sun. You see, this is what it's supposed to look like. So it's just one of two spider plants that I took at the same time. So this spider plant and the other one, they're supposed to be growing the same way. But because this one, excuse me, sorry, yeah, sorry, but because this one was placed against the wall, it got crushed so much that you can only admire it if you are looking at it from this side. By the time you now look at it from this other side, you will see that this spider plant has not been allowed to grow to its potential. So this is how you want to grow your spider plant. You want to make sure it has room to spread out, because once the leaf gets crushed, it won't be able to stand upright and you won't see that picture of beauty right round that a spider plant would have. Thank you very much, everybody. I just wanted to get that out. And now let's talk before I go on to bring the spider plants that are growing in the shade. Yes. Hello, hello. Thank you very much. Yes, I appreciate you. A healthy home. Thanks very much. I can see you all. Thomas, thank you. I appreciate you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. They are so interesting to grow and they soon multiply, Thomas. They soon multiply so much that you'd have something for every part of the house and even to do with swaps. And they're also readily, somebody would say, oh, I would like that, especially people who sell flowers around here. When they see some of the ones that I've created that are very big, because I've got very big pots of spider plants that are really, really big. So they would come to me and say, oh, have you got any more now? I was the one that approached them initially that I have plants that I sell. And then after a while, if they have somebody who wants to buy a spider plant from them, they will just come over and tell me, oh, do you have any of those, your giant spider plants or any of those? I will say, oh, yes, because I always create my spider plants and my potos that if somebody has bought one, when another person sees it, he will say, oh, I got it from this shop. And then the owner of the shop will say, have you got any of those? And I'll say, yes, I've got one. It's not this big, it's this big. I'll just tell them depending on the size. And you can easily create 4 or 5 giant ones within 2 years, and it will be so big. It's not even 2 years, within one summer. So if you start it at this time, by the time we reach the middle of summer, it will be very big and it will have a lot of these babies because all this grew in the summer. They didn't start growing in this winter and it's already very gigantic. Now, the thing that encouraged those ones that are outside to grow very big is because of the size of the pots, because the pot is much bigger. And I put in about 4 spider plants in each one. These little ones, I put in just one spider plant that break off each time into one pot. So that's why they are much smaller. If I wanted them to be big, like because some people only want small spider plants and some people want big spider plants. It depends on each person's option and choice. So each person would tell me this is the type that we like. But somebody will suddenly come along and say, oh, somebody wants to buy a very big spider plant. And if somebody wants to buy a very big plant, means they are got the space and they are ready to accommodate such a spider plant in whatever establishment they want to put it. So the spider plant can grow in almost any soil, but grows best in fertile soil. I've never tried it in soil that is not fertile, but when I read up on it, it says spider plants can grow in any soil. But please try, make sure it's in fertile soil, and you don't have to be fertilizing it continuously. If the soil is fertile, the spider plant will grow on and on and on. You may not need to fertilize more than once in a year. That's the thing with spider plants. And that's because it's only growing leaves mainly. So it grows and it becomes big and it produces so many babies. And you can now decide what you want to do with these babies. You may want to keep them and make creations for the home, for the garden, and then for friends and for people who want to buy. Because you have a lot of florists around and they haven't got spaces. And then people go to the shop and say, oh, we want to buy a spider plant. For example, I'm going to a shop tomorrow and I know what I want to buy already. So if they don't have it, then they will say, oh, if they know somebody in the neighborhood who grows those kind of plants, they would ask. And then I'll go back and collect it. So it's always good to grow plants and just have them because you don't know what plants that a florist in your neighborhood may want. And it will just be a good way to make the florist happy, make yourself happy, and the florist also makes the customer happy. Because what we we need really is space to put these plants in the sun, because the sun is the main energy that they are using. They're using the sun, because if you have these plants and you put them and there's no sun, then they cannot grow. So that's why it's always very limited if it's not a sunny season. For example, like in the winter, we can't start growing so many plants. But the ones that we can grow over and it will remain until the following year are always a great deal, because it helps to green up the house and it doesn't die. But the spider plants that are kept outside, as I said earlier, they will turn yellow, they will turn brown, they will go away because of the cold. Then you cut those ones, they will come back again. The ones that are indoors will remain green. Some of the leaves may turn yellow, that's not a problem. If it was outside, it will probably completely just be gone. I've had this spider plant, and this is its third year. And since the day I put the single spider plant inside that pot, it's never been completely gone. It's always remained here. Please try to grow it. Yes, it's a very good idea to try to grow it, because it's it's really very good to try to grow these spider plants, because they are so versatile. Without being a plant marketer, then you don't have to go out and buy all the plants that you need. You can actually have this spider plant and you use them to swap for some other plants as well. That's one thing that is an advantage. Thank you. That is one thing that is an advantage. I'm going to go and get that spider plant that's growing in the shade before I now bring out the one that I actually produced from seed. Put it close and then I'll just. Okay, this spider plant, excuse me, this spider plant has been growing in the shade, so it's not in a sunny spot like the rest. That's why they have remained small and plentiful, because it's just producing more and more new ones inside the soil there, but they are not growing big like the other ones. When they're in the shade and they're not receiving too much sun, that's what they do. They need a lot of chlorophyll. So you can see that line in the middle is very, very narrow. So although it's the type that's supposed to be white in the middle, It only has just a tiny strip of white in the middle on most of them. It's a very narrow strip of white in the middle, and it is very, very deep green when we compare it to the others. Now, this is growing in the shade, and it's not going to get big as soon as the rest of them. The ones that are growing in a sunny spot will grow very big, and those are the ones, if you want to create a lot of spider plants, those are the ones that you should consider, because I mean that is the condition you should consider placing them where they can receive sun. It will be indoors, but it will be in that part of your house that they're close to the window, and they will just continue growing. They will be very big. That is the best one to that is the best way to treat the spider plants that you want to produce a lot of babies. They need a lot of sunlight for them to grow big and start bringing out those little sticky heads, and these babies will be hanging on it. Now, at some point, we'll see the spider plants start to produce flowers. Everything is so light. Yeah, so the white flowers are not very obvious, although right now they are in bud. This is a flower bud. That's a flower bud. It has not opened yet. And we have this about 4 times in a year. The spider plant produces flowers, and the flowers are really beautiful. It's got 5 petals, and then you see the pollen grains and the anther and the stigma all sticking out like yellow dots on it. So it looks really beautiful when it's in flower. You need to shake this flower, as tiny as it is. You just tap it a little, a little. You don't want it to fall off. You just tap it a little, and in about 2 weeks, it starts to form seeds. I can find one. I saw some seeds here when I was bringing it in. That's a fruit. The fruit looks like three little things joined together. It looks like three little things joined together. That's what the fruit looks like. That is what I will now take and put in the soil, because I will wait for it to dry. Wait for these seeds to dry. This one is on its way to drying. When it dries, it will look almost black, and then it will be quite small. But I will still be able to identify it because it was there always. So I can still identify it. And I will put it in the soil and get some new spider plants growing from seed. What I found interesting about growing this spider plant from seed is that it is plain green. It doesn't have any lines at all. I, I mean, I really, really like that fact, because then it is a different type of spider plant again. It has no white portion. It's completely green. So I thought when it first started growing about 3 months ago, it's taking its time. When you're growing from seed, it will take some time. When it first started growing and it was plain green, I thought to myself, maybe it will mature and I will be able to see some stripes. But it's grown this big, and I still haven't been able to see any stripes. So I'm just trying to do some research, and it says in research that you may actually have some new hybrids Because when this thing was getting pollinated, I don't know which two pollinated each other, and it has now come out and it's just plain green, which makes it very interesting. Now, if it was like a pepper plant or a tomato plant and it comes out with something strange, you may not like it. But because it's a decorative plant, if it comes out with something different, it means you have another type again. So I'm just going to be careful with these ones and make sure they survive. There's three of them. After about how many seeds that I planted, maybe about 6 or 10, I got three as a success because I wasn't, I would just plant it, I wouldn't find it again, I'll plant it. And then once I planted one day, I just saw and it was growing. So I said, oh, no, these things are growing. And it came out and they are just plain green. So this is one very good experiment that I'll call it an experiment that I've discovered about the spider plant, and I'm going to start growing some more. I'm not going to grow it in the winter. I will make sure in the spring any seeds that come along in the spring and forms fruits, I will try to grow it to see the new type of spider plants that I'm going to get, because this one is completely green. Maybe I will get one that will be completely white. I don't know. But I just love the way this spider plant looks because it's entirely different from the two types that I have before. So I can actually say this is probably a third type of spider plant. There are many types of spider plants, many designs, many patterns. So this could be one that would be like a third type of spider plant. So growing the spider plant from seed was actually an activity that I did once, I did second time, and then the third time I just saw the thing germinating, and I was like, oh, okay, waiting for it to see what, and it comes up, but it has no stripes. It's a very good result. That's what I'd consider. So if they start growing now and they multiply, it means I can say I have bigger ones, and then I'll see what kind of little babies they will have when they start to produce their own little babies. They'll probably be growing as well, and I would have another line of growing spider plants. So growing the spider plant from seeds will actually give us a result that we are not expecting. That's why I'm going to try to grow more, because it's actually a variety. It gives me a new variety entirely from the types that I have, because I know that these two may be cross pollinating each other without me being aware of it, but they that come up with something that looks really different from both of them. It doesn't look like any one of the two. It's just plain and it's still nice because the leaf stands very well upright, just like it should do. And I mean, I'll just try to research and find out that yes, there are some that are green, but I couldn't understand why this has come about because of that's the seeds that I collected. So maybe that's what it's supposed to be. When they produce by seed, it will come out. Just like I'm going to mention one more plant, just like the Sansevieria, that's the mother-in-law's tongue. Because if you have the Sansevieria and you take a cotton and grow it, it's supposed to have yellow on the edges, then it won't have yellow anymore. But this one is grown from seed, supposed to have white on the edges or in the middle. I actually collected it from this plant. I remember that. Collected it from the plant with the green middle. So I was expecting to see the white on the edges. I know that it doesn't have a white in the middle. Those ones didn't produce big enough seeds. So as soon as I saw this, I was waiting for the edges to go white, but it hasn't done so. It's remained plain green, and I've considered this to be a real new variety that's been developed right in my garden. Yeah, I like it. So I hope it's survives and produce a few more green um, spider plants like itself. So as I would go on, spider plants, when you grow one in a few months, if I put one spider plant in the pot and it starts to take root and it's growing, it's going to show me another one just by its side. That means it has produced another spider plant beside itself. So it means this spider plant is so prolific in reproducing. I put in just the one and I can see another one beside it. You can see I can separate them. You see this one and you can see another one on the side. And there's a tiny little one still trying to come up. It's not yet big, just below. So within a period of about 3 months, that single spider plant that I took off and put in this soil is given another one and yet another one again. This is the reason why spider plants easily become root bound. If you've got your spider plant in a pot, you'd have to be changing it maybe every 2 years so that it doesn't become too root bound and it gets affected because there wouldn't be space, there won't be any soil. And it's also an advantage. It means you can divide it, plant one half, and do whatever you like with the planting of the other half because just that side has produced a lot more for you. One thing as gardeners that we must note, which I have in one of my films, is that spider plants have invasive roots. So you can't have them just on the ground in your garden unless they are the only ones you're growing because their roots will go far and wide and they will just be growing all over the place. That's what spider plants do. They grow right around the place and they will have this very thick and strong roots that other plants will not be able to survive. So when I had my spider plant in a garden bed, it was buried in its own pot. And then I took that pot and buried it in the garden bed. And if you also want to plant spider plant in the ground in your garden, put it in a pot and then place it in the ground. Don't just let the spider plant have the chance. It's just like mint. Mint, it will just be surfacing everywhere. Spider plant does the same. They are said to have invasive roots because their roots can go a long distance and then go and bring up a new, entirely new plant on another side of the garden. This is one thing that we need to consider if we are trying to grow spider plants. Now, one interesting thing about the structure of the roots of spider plant is that it has some breathing roots. This is why spider plants are very good for the home. You see, those breathing roots, they're actually the ones that absorb all the poisonous chemicals in the atmosphere. We know that oxygen is what plants produce, but in the case of spider plants, they are super producers, they are super air purifiers. They help purify the air in the environment. So you go to some places and they have a lot of spider plants, and you're wondering why. This could be because they want to purify the air in the environment. Because when you are growing spider plants, it's taking in the carbon dioxide and it's also taking in some other poisonous gases in the atmosphere and storing it in its roots. When you look at the roots of a spider plant, you will actually see the roots are like fat. So they are able to accommodate all the different gases that is coming in, and then the plant's body will make use of it, and the plant will be producing oxygen for the environment. It takes in carbon dioxide, takes in other gases, and then it produces oxygen. This is why the spider plant is a very important plant to have indoors. It's not just planting it outdoors, but we should have spider plants indoors because they produce oxygen. It's almost like they've taken it as their duty to purify the air. Spider plants are air purifiers. And then after they have grown, they grow these little spiderets, and those as well start because they are also respiring now. They're taking in carbon dioxide and giving out oxygen. They're also taking in some other gases in the atmosphere, poisonous gases that come from industrialization. They're all absorbing it and cleaning the airs. So the spider plant is one of the few plants that actually does purify the air for us. That's why you find that a lot of big, a lot of people would like big spider plants because it's got a lot of leaves, which means it's going to have very high performance. If it's very big, they probably place it somewhere central so that it can actually help cleanse the air. Spider plant is very good at keeping the environment fresh and clean, and like every other plant, it also produces oxygen. If you plant two or three spider plants within a year, you're going to have so many to put in other pots and place in other parts of the house. And one advantage that we have with spider plants is that if you've had enough and you don't have any more space that you want to put a spider plant indoors, you can place them outside and they are very happy. They will just grow beautifully. When you see the beauty of a spider plant on a sunny day, it's striking, especially when it's just a bright day. The spider plant just, it's as if it's singing. That's what I always say to myself, because all the leaves are standing upright, like that little pot. Now imagine if it was growing in a big pot outside, all the leaves all standing upright and looking good, because you have placed it where it's not going to be getting crushed by people passing by left, right, center. Place it, it's not getting crushed, it's not too close to the wall, so that the leaves can grow properly. The spider plant will create a very pretty picture, and the spider plant will produce so many new spiders that you can create as many of that for your friends, for your family, and if you want to sell them. The spider plant is also another money making plant, I can assure you, because you can make so many spider plants, you will actually be overwhelmed with the number of spider plants you would have. People want plants. Everybody wants plants. And we are getting more and more, and we are wanting more and more of things that are plants to decorate our homes rather than other objects. So a lot more people want plants in their homes nowadays. I mean, what with what is going on in these current times, want plants that will actually help purify the home, purify the environment, produce more oxygen for us to breathe. The spider plant is one of the key players when it comes to keeping the environment very good oxygen level, very good clearance of all those gases that are not supposed to be in our houses, but they're there maybe because we are living in cities, or some heavy duty vehicles are passing by. We just feel much better because we know there's a lot of plants around, and they're taking care of a lot of this pollution that's being delivered into the atmosphere. I mean, you may be in your house and you will see the plane is flying right and flying left and flying all over. Yeah, the plane is very high up in the sky, but all the things that the plane is bringing out of its exhaust fumes, they all come down. The cars are passing by left, right, and center. The trailers and the trucks, they all have exhaust pipes. All of those fumes, which we don't see with our eyes, they are there in the atmosphere. It's these organisms that take care of them, the spider plants. They would absorb all those fumes, all those smokes, and the carbon dioxide and store it in their roots and give us oxygen in return. So, spider plants are actually very important for us to have in the house, and it's very easy to propagate them in fertile soil. That's the best kind of soil to put them in. But take note, trying to propagate them, please put them in a pot so that they are not all over the place because they have invasive roots. If you're going to plant it in the soil, place the spider plant in a pot and then bury that pot in the ground because there are some people that have spider plants. Don't assume that spider plant is growing right in the soil. That spider plant has been buried in a pot and has been planted in a pot, and then the pot has now been placed in the soil just to make sure the spider plant doesn't overtake the whole place and the other plants cannot grow very well because the spider plant roots are very, very tough at doing their job. They will spread all over the place trying to find new territory. You would want to make sure you curb that invasive roots and keep them well enclosed in their own location. That is the best way for the spider plant. Watering the spider plant, you don't have to water it too often. You just make sure you create a regular pattern. That's what it means. The watering has to be regular. If you're watering your other plants, maybe twice a week, you can just create a routine for watering your spider plant along with the rest of them. If you have some other plant that you only water once a week, you'd have to create a routine where you know that I would have to water this water plant one extra day that I didn't water the others because the spider plant wants to be watered regularly, and there should be drainage holes at the bottom of the pot. That's the best thing for the spider plant. It needs to be well drained because the roots don't like to stand in water. If you're growing it in water, it will stay alive like that one that I showed you. It won't die and then it will develop water roots. But I don't think it's going to grow very big because this spider plant came off. It was beside this. There were two of them, one and two. And since it has fallen off, I don't think it has really beaten this one. And this one hasn't been planted in anything. If I had planted this one in the soil by now, it would be as big as one of those. It is still there, looking like a little baby spider plant. And this one, although it has developed some roots, because it's in water, it's just taking that root, absorbing the water just to stay alive until I'm ready to put it in the soil. I don't think it's going to grow big and start doing any sort of um, moves while it's in this water because it's not in its best growing medium. The soil is its best growing medium. It needs that growing medium for it to come out with the best of its ability. That's with its real potential of producing more spider plants. So if you actually want to keep a spider plant and you don't want it to get bigger, you don't want it to, then plant it in water. It will be well slowed down and it won't it won't start producing baby ones, and you can keep it that way. It's just like the way we keep potatoes sometimes. You keep potatoes in the soil, it will grow a lot. If you keep potatoes in water, you slowed it down, but the leaves will be very fresh. Those are the, you can see the leaves on here are really very fresh because they're just receiving the water continuously, but it's not going to start producing babies anytime soon. Those ones over there are about the same age as this one, and this one still remains like this. So the water is just keeping the spider plant alive. It's not going to be giving it so much that it's going to be producing, it's going to be prolific. So the best place is not in the water. So it depends on what situation you want for your plant. If you want to produce a lot of plants for your house, or for friends or family, or for sale, then the soil is the best medium. The water will slow it down but keep it alive. Now, there's another type of medium that we can use for spider plant. It's the laker. It's like some mud. This mud has been rolled together. The mud has been rolled together and it now looks like small stones. So nowadays, a lot of people are changing to Leica so that they can put the Leica in the glass container or vase and not have to do drainage. You put the water in, you put the Leica in, and then you plant. You don't have to do drainage for that plant, and it's actually more convenient because then you don't need a base plate. If you don't need a base plate, you can use some of these nice um, flower pots that we have around that don't have any drainage on them. I'll just show you, but this is actually a tiny size, not a big size of the pot. But when these pots come, this is the smallest of the set. When these pots come, they don't have any holes. They are just like this. There are some that are larger, but these are the smaller ones. So what you are expected to do is plant in a plastic pot and place it here. But with Leica, you can put the Leica in here, you put some water, and then put your plant. That is one problem that Leica has solved. You don't have to have drainage. You can just put your plant in it, and it doesn't feel like there is no drainage because it feels that Leica, it's made with mud and some other things, is helping to solve that situation. I haven't started using Leica, but I've seen it with friends. So that's why I won't say you can't use water at all for planting your plant your spider plants, because you can use water with Leica and it will work out fine. The plant roots will have something to hold on to as if they were in the soil, and this will bode well for their existence. They will start flowering. I've seen plants that are being grown in Leica flowering and growing to very big heights, and it's actually very surprising to see. So when you have this spider plants, it's actually like taking a look and trying to see the differences so that you would know, okay, I'll take this one and the other one and group them together. It also makes it to look beautiful and attractive, so that when you want to either give it as a gift or sell it on, you know you have a nice combination of your spider plant that you want to work with. And it's always comes down to how beautiful the spider plant is. A lot of people buying and growing spider plants may not even be considering the fact that it's very good for our environment. They're buying it because it's of its beauty first. But the second thing is that it's very good to have them indoors because they help clean pollution, and as well they absorb carbon dioxide like every other plant, and they produce oxygen. So if you have any questions, please put them in so that I can see. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, for the likes. I really, really appreciate your being here. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. If you have your spider plant in a place that gets sunlight in the morning, that is actually great. Morning sun is actually very good. The shade I'm talking about is when it's against a wall that it doesn't actually get direct sunlight at all. That's the shade that I'm talking about. If it's getting morning sun, it will grow very well. It doesn't have to get the sun all day because the morning sun will be starting from around 6 a.m. up till about 11 or 12 noon. That's already 6 hours. So that's enough. And that's why we always say it needs up to 6 to 8 hours. That's because even if it only receives sun early in the morning, so far it receives up to the end of the morning. It's been receiving the sun even sometimes before we are aware that the sun has come up. Then that is good enough. That location is good enough. Where they receive sun in the early morning. So at this point, I would say thank you to everyone for watching this video. I hope you can lay your hands on some spider plants and start to grow them because they are very great for indoors, as all the things I've said about them, and they also look very beautiful. And having plants in your space is a very great way to relax after a day of work. You'll just be able to look at the plants and take your mind off the stress of the day. And after your plants have produced a lot, you can give them away, you can sell them, you can plant them outside, and you just green up the environment, and the plant carries on doing its own wonderful job. I appreciate your presence. Thank you very much. And I'll be bringing this live stream to an end. Thanks for coming, everybody. I really, really do appreciate your presence. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much. And bye. Okay, let me just enter. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for being here. I've enjoyed being able to explain some of my spider plants and why they're a bit different from each other. Have a nice evening. Bye. And I'll see you tomorrow.